Hey, it's me, Rasan. I don't know, man. Huge hole in my,
Yeah.
understanding. My fellow Americans.
Probably here.
As long as whatever you're doing doesn't hurt anyone else, I don't care.
Different perspective of what an interesting topic is than I would assume.
This is Balance Exchange. Hey, everybody. Balance Exchange is back. Cronus is here again with
Papa Bear, and today we're going to talk about something we have talked about as needing to do as a topic, and I think we both were kind of excited about it, and I think we're going to go ahead and do that today. So we're going to do the Starship Troopers discussion and talk about like civil service in order to earn citizenship. So like one of the ways I want to talk about this is it's not just military service, but civil service. But I think we have to start off with some of our normal openings for our traditions here. So what are you reading right now?
I am reading In Flame, which is book 6 of the Completionist Chronicles.
Who wrote that? Who's that?
Dakota Kraut, and it's another lit RPG book series. It's a really good one. So
so when you're talking about the cultivation style ones, it made me think of one. Have you read the Lightbringer series?
I have not.
So those are like some recently, and I was really nervous when I started listening to them and was getting what I thought was towards the end, that wasn't like the end of the book series, and you're like, oh man, this author's not done yet, but he has finished that primary line series, so they're really good. I read them not too long ago, and it was one of the ones that I did the same thing you're making me do with the Awaken Online stuff, where it was book after book after book. I couldn't go back to like doing a professional one. I had to keep the next story going.
Yeah.
I am still reading. Let's see, what was the last one I was working on? It is called. I keep forgetting the name of it. Unsold. Yeah, that's the first one by Will White. You said it's called
the Cradle series.
The Cradle series.
Yeah.
Which even when you talked about it, and I had already heard it in the book, and I realized like because it's only mentioned one or two times right there at the beginning, I didn't realize. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the name of that planet. Like.
Yeah.
That others refer to it as Cradle. I was like, that's right.
Yeah, well, when they actually talk about the actual Cradle and all the other stuff, because I didn't understand why they called it the Cradle series at all until like way later, because there's like overarching stuff that's going on in the book that they don't really break it down until like kind of the end of the first book, and then in the second book they talk a little bit more about it, but it's almost like there's like 2 or 3 stories in one story.
And I'm picking up the little message, like there's the message thing, like you're accessing the database and like getting information. There's like these little hints. I'm like, there's some, and then there's the external stuff coming in, and then there's the close story. So I was like, okay, I'm picking the bigger story kind of things up, kind of the Brandon Sanderson, full universe thing going between different book series. You're like, there's got to be some interconnected stuff going to other stories. So
yeah,
pretty good.
That reminds me, I still got to continue on the next series from Brandon Sanderson, the series that you recommended, but they're crazy long. Every single book.
The Empire, the Infinite Empire one.
Yeah, is it called Infinite Empire? The Final Empire.
So that was that, huh?
Final Empire.
The Final Empire. That's what it was. Yeah. That one is like I think a really good gateway drug for Brandon Sanderson because like you get interested in his style, and then you're gonna want to know more and more about these other completely isolated stories, and then you start picking up like, wait a minute. That's the same name of a character from a different thing. And then you start realizing like there's interconnected stories here. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a couple of lit RPG guys are starting to do that now, where it's just like you hear about stories from this other people, these other groups, but then it's like thousands of years in the future or in the past, and it's just like, oh, that's them, and they're basically in the same place.
Yeah. How are you here? Yeah.
All right. What are you drinking?
So I'm going to do something here. So I am going to be drinking this one from a bottle. So it is still sticking to the standard stuff, my Michelob Ultra. It's a lime and prickly pear cactus. So I don't know if it's available everywhere, but it's available here because of all the desert stuff. But I did get the fridge installed. Like we talked about, I managed to move my fridge in here so I can just go like this.
I hear it.
How does the bottle opener work? Haven't even tried it yet. That's how new the fridge is in here. Hold on a second.
That was anticlimactic. Come on.
You're embarrassing me, bottle opener. I'm gonna have to edit this out now. This is not even working.
It doesn't work? It can just be a problem.
I don't know what angle to take on it.
Oh. There we go.
Okay. Yeah. you have to go really far. Like it's almost 90 to get
Oh
it to
wow.
hook, and then it drops under and goes just fine. I was like,
Yeah.
that was weird. Yeah. So still keto. These are still pretty good. It's only 95 calories and almost no carbs. So
Nice.
So at this point in watching our videos, you may or may not know that I am an active duty United States Marine. And I've been doing this for 20 plus years, so I know that it's really important for me to make sure to get this out there. If it's your first time watching this, please stick around and make sure you understand the disclaimer. If you've watched a whole lot of our episodes so far, feel free to go ahead and jump ahead to the new content. So what I need to talk about today is that I am not authorized and have no way of being approved to speak on behalf of the Marine Corps. So any opinion that I give or any concept that I discuss today is the position and the opinion of just me, myself, just a man who has a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in leadership and organizational management, and has spent my whole life looking at government structures and social contracts and how these things are supposed to work, what the philosophies and things behind them are, and read a lot of books on that kind of stuff. And it's definitely one of my personal and key passions. And so when you hear me maybe give a position or a concept on something, that is only my own position. I am not a public affairs officer for the Marine Corps. I am in no way giving what the Marine Corps' official position on anything would be. And honestly, a lot of the topics we're going to cover here, I'm pretty sure the Marine Corps doesn't have a particular position on. So if you do have any questions about what the Marine Corps' policy on certain things could be, you can definitely research that and find those out, or leave a comment or send us a message if you can get a hold of us somehow, and we can maybe be able to answer those questions for you. So with that said, let's get you back to this week's content.
And I'm not keto,
what
right?
do you,
I'm not keto right now. Obviously, I haven't been keto for a while. But I intermittent fast, so I'm okay. Obviously, you can see me. I'm not fat anymore.
I will tell you, like, so because I can't remember what I was doing. I was looking for something, and I was kind of looking back at a couple of our earlier episodes. Like, I can visibly see in myself in videos from when we started that I've lost a good bit of weight. I was like, okay.
Oh yeah,
cool.
you can see it definitely in your face. So yeah, obviously I don't get to see the rest of your body, but your face I can see is is definitely slimmer. So congrats on that. I'm glad keto worked for you. When I recommend keto to most people, I don't know if I talked about it before. It's like I'm kind of hesitant because it's like it's a discipline thing. Like it's a good diet, but first of all, it's it's a discipline thing, and second of all, you shouldn't try to do it forever. So
Yeah, and we talked about it, and you pointed it out one time too. Like, you're really glad that, like, every once in a while I'm like, I just knew it wasn't going to work, so you accept that and you kind of like capitalize on that moment, and then just get it back as soon as you can.
yeah,
So like, there's those temptations, and I'm providing the same advice to others. So like, my brother is trying to lose weight, so he's like, I got a plan. I'm doing these other things. And I was like, I'm not saying you should, because it's definitely not for everybody, and even if you did stick to the discipline, it still might not work for you personally, because your body might not respond to it as well. So
yeah,
but it's worth trying if you find that you can, especially since I was explaining it to my mom, who's trying to lose weight too, and I was explaining it to her. She's like, wait a minute, this is a diet? Because I'm like, I can eat steaks, eggs, bacon, cheese, like whatever, like all of the foods that are my favorite, like real foods. I still eat all that stuff. I just can't eat like bread and like cookies. Like, I hate losing out on candy and cookies and stuff. But then we found that there are cookies you can eat,
oh
and
yeah,
there are like treats that you can have that they're not gonna be if you just eat those, you're keto, because you don't get enough fats out of those. It's just not so high in carbs it trips you out. So you still have to eat lots of fats. But
yeah.
yeah, so I was explaining. She's like, that's a diet. I was like, it is, but it might not, and especially since I'm not your doctor, I have no idea where your cholesterol levels are, where your health is right now. You may need to do something else first to get to a point where keto can make sense for you. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
I mean, I remember when I had high cholesterol, I started doing keto. My cholesterol went down, but I know some people like their cholesterol doesn't go down, but it's because of other reasons. Most of the time, it's because of other reasons. It's because people have this weird misunderstanding about what cholesterol is for, and so if you already have arterial tearing from having high blood pressure and other sorts of issues from being basically overweight,
yeah,
it's going to jack up your cholesterol because cholesterol is used to repair your arteries. So if you're still repairing your arteries and you're on keto, your cholesterol is still going to go up, and you're not going to escape that. But you need to deal with the issue of why am I still getting arterial tearing from high blood pressure and being overweight? So you should probably tackle that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and again, I would say if you're at that point, you have to talk to your doctor about it. That's why I told
Yeah.
him, I was like, and my mom, I was like, what you probably want to do is say something about it to the doctor next time you go in. Go like, hey, I was talking to my son. He's eating keto right now and it's helping him lose weight. Do you think that was something that would work for me? They'll be able to look at your chart and your numbers and go, let's wait a little bit. Let's do these things first and get you to a place where I'm comfortable with that. And that's someone who's, for me, especially, like, I know I'm in a pretty healthy place. I just needed to lose some weight. So it's pretty easy to shift and try different things, and I'm not going to hurt myself.
Yeah.
But, if you're already in a sensitive medical like state, you probably need to check with a doctor before trying stuff like that. So
yeah, like your own personal doctor, but also probably a nutritionist, because most general doctors, like family doctors, they don't know that much about nutrition. So
yeah. Well, and on most programs, like we talked about social programs and stuff, right? On most of the insurances you're on, you're not going to be able to just go to a nutrition on your own. You would probably want your doctor to say you need to go to one, and then you can use your insurance to do it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but you have to start that conversation with your regular doctor first.
Yes. Anyway, now that we just talked about keto for a minute, I'm drinking beer. Not low carb beer. So I'm drinking Honorable Villain, and it is by, who is this by? Oh, it's by Moonraker.
Did you say Honorable Villain?
Yes. Actually,
so like, weren't you reading a book about a villain that was trying to be like a good main character?
Yes, I was. But this came in a pack, so it's kind of funny that it's, that happened.
Yeah. Good randomness of like life, how it goes together sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It's very strange. And it's by Moonraker Brewery, and they're a really good brewery. I know their whole like back story. But yeah, it's a really good triple IPA or Imperial IPA. So, cheers.
What's the difference?
An Imperial IPA, I think, is you can age it a little bit longer. I think that's what makes it Imperial. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And if you get like a straight triple or double IPA, you should drink them as soon as possible, because it'll be fresher.
Okay.
Yeah, but some things that are like double and triple IPAs, if you don't drink them as soon as possible, the flavor changes over time, and it's probably not the flavor that the brewer intended, and so that's why they tell you to drink them. And they'll skunk faster, which is terrible.
Yeah.
But Imperial IPAs, they're designed to be kind of aged a little bit longer, and it'll keep its flavor profile as intended by the brewer for longer.
So like, okay, got it. Yeah, so I know you're kind of more of a, especially IPA side, beer snob than I am. So I was like, hey, what's that mean? What's the difference? I definitely don't know much about IPAs. So
yeah, I mean, IPAs are just kind of like they're not a new thing, but as far as beer goes, like the fad has been a new thing, especially California IPAs. Yeah. Now they have the NE IPAs, which are New England IPAs, which are the hazy ones. Those are a new fad, and then they have like they have this weird champagne beer type thing. I forget what they called it. But they basically used a yeast that was like a champagne yeast, and so like the beer that you got, the bubbles were like much more like fine bubbles, and so it's kind of like an interesting taste. But it didn't really. I don't think that one took off very well. But any IPAs and California IPAs are still high up there.
Gotcha. Okay, so I wanted to start this off by making a kind of an interesting factoid to start us off, because I was curious, so I looked it up ahead of time, because I kind of have a pretty good idea about how I want to talk about this in general and have the basic discussion. But I thought of an interesting point that would be a counterpoint to this, because the conversation always goes towards where, when I say like service for citizenship, similar to the way they do it in Starship Troopers, most people are like, well, not everybody can join the military or should join the military.
Nope.
And so then if someone can't join the military, you have one of two options, right? If, say, you're medically not qualified, like Steve Rogers, then maybe like you just get a waiver and you can still become a citizen, but then that's kind of not fair. Like, well, you didn't do the service that everybody else is being required to do, so should you be allowed to just waive out of it? Then you just get waivers the same as we did with the draft. You're like, oh, I'm going to college, or I'm going to do this thing, and you just get waivers and don't do your service. Huh?
I've got bone spurs.
Yeah. And then you don't do your service, but you can still be a citizen because you got a medical waiver. So that's why, to me, I think, I try to think towards what's the purpose, especially in the United States. Clearly, we don't require everyone to serve in order to have the military that is in the state that it's in right now, because we haven't required military service or had like a mandatory draft in a long time. So we do fall into one of those categories that kind of requires a military service because everyone has to register for the draft. Well, at least adult males between the age of 18 and 25 have to register for the
women
draft.
do now too. They changed that a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was literally like last year or the year before. Yeah. And it is updated on the thing I'm about to reference. But since when it first changed, it was that, and then in the last 2 years, it's changed. I think it was maybe 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
That's something I can look up. But but it's not like mandatory service. So I think that for me, the goal is not about building a strong military. It's about identifying this responsibility to other people who are a part of our society, right? So if we want a person who's going to vote and contribute, that person would be ideally suited if they had a better understanding of their own role in the world and like how they fit into our society. And we did have some of this discussion when I talked about my top 10, because this was one of those things I think was on that top 10 list.
Yeah.
So what I thought I would start off with was actually talking about countries that do require military service right now in order to gain citizenship. Like, so there are plenty of countries in the world that require military service for all of their citizens. And it's actually a number larger than I kind of thought it was. I have this map, so I'll share my screen real quick if I can get the right one there. And I'll talk about it too, but I kind of just wanted to show it. I should be able to if I can.
It came with visual aids, y'all. This is going to be great, but not great for y'all that are listening.
Yeah, everybody listening, I will describe it.
Yeah.
It is definitely pretty obvious what's going on once I figure out. Oh, there it is. Where's it now? I don't know why I was having so much trouble.
I know
figuring that out. I've done it before.
Yeah, I know there's one country in particular that affected. So I used to be a huge UFC fan. I mean, I still am. I just don't watch as much. But it affected a UFC fighter, and I was like, wow, he had to be gone for I think it was 2 or 3 years, and he was a really good fighter.
Okay, so should be sharing my screen now, and
yep. There we go.
See it once it goes.
Wow.
All right, are you seeing a map?
Yes, I see the map. That means we see the map.
So the red countries are those that require military service. It's a lot more red than I initially would have expected when I looked at it. I knew there were a handful, but there's a lot more here than I actually expected.
Yeah.
So you can see almost all of, so Russia, Scandinavia, all of the Central Asia countries, China, almost all of Southeast Asia, at least about half of Africa, most of South America, all require military service. So I will go down this list, and it's probably going to be a little bit obnoxious, and if you need to, you can move a little bit forward once I start. But it is significantly more countries than I kind of thought was going to be. I knew that I knew South Korea did, I knew Israel did, and that was like literally the only ones I knew for sure did. And this was kind of a shock to me to find out that there are this many countries that require some kind of military service for their citizenship. So let's see here.
Yeah, I was gonna say I knew about South Korea and China and a few other ones, but yeah, I didn't know any of them in South America or in Israel, because Gal Gadot, she was in the military. So
yeah, compulsory military service. So let's see. We're gonna go down it this way. So some have compulsory and then continue on voluntary. And then some, basically, we kind of would say we fall into that group where ours is a registration system, but not like a compulsory service, because now all have to register for selective service, but we don't need that unless a major conflict happened and we called up more forces than we currently had available. But it's a little bit different. And again, we're still talking about military service specifically, not just what I think is the concept I would want us to go with later. So those who have compulsory military service for up to a year include Brazil, Estonia, France, Greece, Qatar, Sweden, and Turkey. France kind of surprised me because I know there's always jokes within, especially the American military service, of joking about how French don't fight and they always surrender, and also just but they all have been in the military at some point, according to this, right?
Yeah, I was surprised about Qatar because I lived there for a little bit, so yeah. It's a pretty nice place actually in the Middle East. So
yeah, it's definitely pretty. So then those that require a full year, so that was those that require some kind of service up to a year, some different numbers, but those that anything less than a year, but up to that point, right? So then those that require exactly a year are Algeria, Bolivia, Colombia, Guatemala, Kazakhstan, Moldova, Mongolia, Paraguay, Russia, Taiwan, Tunisia, Uzbekistan. So that's all of the Central Asian countries and most of the South American ones. And what's crazy, so like, I'm sure that those countries, especially the Central Asian ones, they got that tradition from Russia when they were all USSR, and then just have continued that kind of tradition of service for a year. So then those who go up to 18 months, so that you can see there's like this kind of like varying degree of how much time, but it's still some kind of service. Include Azerbaijan, Belarus, Benin, Cambodia, Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, right? Cyprus, Egypt, Georgia, Kuwait, Laos, Morocco, and United Arab Emirates. So that's 18 months is a pretty good number. I still think for me and what we talked about last time, I think the right number is 2 years once we get to the concept that I'm working towards. But 18 months is not bad either. That's a pretty good amount of time to put your life towards something, to learn something about like life and everything, including it. So let's see. For those who have mandatory service anything longer than 18 months, this is kind of a long list. So here we go. Armenia, Angola, Central African Republic, Chad, Cuba, Eritrea, Equatorial Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Iran, Israel, North Korea, South Korea, Kyrgyzstan, Libya, Mali, Mauritania, Mozambique, Myanmar, Niger, Sao Tome and Principe, Senegal, Singapore, Somalia, Syria, Sudan, Tajikistan, Thailand, Turkmenistan, Togo, and Yemen.
Wow.
So, that's a lot. It's like a really big list.
Yeah, that is a big list.
And I knew there was so I've worked with the Thai military a lot, especially the Thai Marine Corps, and like I guess I just didn't really realize that it was compulsory service, because I knew there were plenty of young adults right in that right age range that would have probably still been on compulsory service who weren't in the military. And then I was obviously meeting up with people who were in the military in that age group. So I guess my brain just never made this connection that maybe they just were people who had one of those waivers or didn't have to do service or something along those lines. Somehow they weren't, like the guy who's driving the tuk-tuk is probably the same age as someone who would be in the military at that time. So I'm like, how did you not end up in the military? And I imagine there's probably several systems that, same as we would have if we had it as compulsory military service, to say, I'm not qualified to do that. He's got asthma or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the things. So I've talked about, the whole doing some sort of civil service for like a while now. Even with my, even before I went through this kind of like evolutionary change of like my mindset, I thought for a while like we should have some sort of compulsory, civil service here in America, because especially the way that America has been going, like people that are only concerned about themselves, and that's the I would say at this point it's probably the majority of America, and that's being conservative. It's probably the vast majority of Americans that are just all about themselves, and it's like, listen, this country is built upon people working together and getting shit done, and the fact that you get to live this life of leisure on the backs of others, and you can be so flippant about like the military or somebody working at the DMV or all these other government workers, or even just people that just create like repair the streets, and they get mad at them for repairing the streets at the wrong time of day, and it's like that's hard work. Like, do you want to do that? Like, maybe you have a different opinion if you had to do that for like a couple of years. So
yeah, like all of the big public works projects they did in the like the 50s to get the economy back up and running through the 40s and 50s too. So building dams and stuff like that. People died like building these things, but they needed work. They needed a place to survive, and live, and that's something that they were doing, not as a contingency on their citizenship or their ability to contribute a say in what's going on, which is kind of, I think, probably the second part of what we'll talk about for this.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't. It's weird that at this point in time, both of us feel the need to basically make people give a fuck. Like, I mean, that's the end goal. Yeah, it's like this shouldn't be. We shouldn't have to like force people to do this. Obviously, if we're in like a sort of utopia, and I guess our utopia, people would just automatically volunteer and they would just do it. but that's just not the way. That's not the way our society is right now.
Yeah, or it would be small enough of a community to understand the needs of other people and be close enough to it to care about how your actions impact others. Like so stupid simple examples is like one of the things I always do that even like other Marines don't do is if I see trash on the ground, I just pick it up. It doesn't matter where I am. I'm like, oh, what's this doing here in the middle of the parking lot? And I pick up this bag of like it was a bag from some rocks or something at the parking lot at Home Depot that probably was just still in some contractor's truck and got blown out by the wind and was blowing along. I'm like, oh, I'll pick this up. I'm going right over to the store next door. We drive over to that parking lot and I find a trash can and put it in the trash can. So it's not blowing around just because why not?
Yeah, I mean that's the way it should be. You know, like you shouldn't have to rely on like I forget what they call them, not like a chain gang or anything like that, but you know, people that get in trouble with the law and they have to like go and like clean the streets and shit like that. It's like, why can't you
No,
just
yeah,
pick up?
yeah.
What do they call it? I
Doing
forget.
like, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Like, do you do the public service type thing? Oh, I got what's it called? Anyways,
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but
uh,
people will probably know what we're talking about. It's like a thing
yeah,
where
it's screaming at us in the comments right now.
yeah,
Like,
it's like
ah,
I
what
know
are
what
you
it is. I
doing?
did that. I didn't. All right, I never did.
Crazy.
So, but yeah, I mean,
God,
we shouldn't. I think communities should be able to like sort that out. You know, decide volunteerism and sort that out. If you see some trash, you know, just pick it up. It's not hard and throw it away. I see people every now and again like out on their own, just like picking up trash in the street with a bag. Maybe I'll when my daughter gets a little bit older and when COVID's gone, I think I'm gonna show her like, hey, we're just gonna go out and pick up trash, and that's just
yeah.
gonna be the way it is.
Community service.
I think it is just community service, yeah. But it's
Yeah,
weird
they
because
normally just refer to it that way, but yeah, it's
yeah,
like mandatory service.
yeah,
So there was one last note here on it, which was that for most of those countries, the compulsory service is for adult males only, but some do have compulsory service for females as well. And like you mentioned, and I guess I don't know if there's a note up there about it. I want to look back, but I'll check in a minute if it mentions. Says it was updated in 2021, so I'm going to pretty much assume I just kind of glazed over it. That we do now include women in the selective service so that they're registered for service. But this is saying mandatory service. Those are Armenia, Cape Verde, Chad, China, Eritrea, Israel, Norway, North Korea, and Sweden. So South Korea service, unlike North Korean service, is not mandatory for women, which is I kind of assumed they had similar historical reasons for doing that, and that was something that was a part of that. Some of those things vary as far as ages and like what the amount of service or what kinds of service it all leads to. But I still think that it kind of surprised me when I looked it up because I expected to say there aren't that many, but it kind of changed the way I looked at the startup of this conversation, which was the fact that there are that many countries that are willing to require military service kind of tells me that it makes sense that this kind of a concept does have value, at least for potentially for them, or maybe it's just historical, like they're used to it. It's a tradition of military service for those. But then I also wonder, is there any kind of a negative impact for those that can't complete that military service? So I guarantee those systems, like I mentioned in Thailand, have some kind of an out because you don't want that person in your military. Do they just not get the same rights as those people who do their service?
yeah. That's a good question. I mean, well, I mean, if you look at we have the same deal in America. If you think about it, like if you served in America at all and you didn't get a dishonorable discharge or other than honorable, you still get a host of other benefits that civilian does not get. And I don't think I just thought about that right now. I'm just like, yeah, there's like I have VA programs and all kinds of other shit that I have access to. Most of them I don't even use, but I have access to them, but a civilian doesn't.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, but I guess to me, I tie it back to, and I guess we'll start transitioning kind of towards the second element of this, which is that it would sort of mean that there would need to be two classifications of like citizenship within the United States, sort of, in this construct that I'm thinking of, which would mean you would have people who are residents, those who live here and receive all the benefits of being a member of this society. They have all of the same access to those resources like you talked about. Military service, it being a specific thing like you mentioned with the veterans, like the VA Veterans Affairs and other things like that, those probably wouldn't change. So if you're in a part of a different service, which we'll talk about, then I'm sure those independent services have their own benefits too.
Yeah.
So those would still stay to your organization. But other than that, the general like citizenship, all the social programs we talked about in the last one, you'd still have access to all of that stuff. But what you would lose out on by not performing the service is the ability to make the decisions about which programs should and shouldn't be run.
So voting, mainly.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to get down to. And previous to last year, I would have disagreed with you. But because last year happened, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I think we should have a more educated voting class. And this is where I think I talked about it before, but I didn't go into real details. I'll just touch upon it a little bit right now, is that when you talk about, having requirements for, like, educational requirements, to be specific about voting requirements, traditionally that's been to discourage people of color to not vote by, like, saying, hey, you need to have a certain level of education to do that. But obviously this kind of goes a little bit around that because you can do a civil service to do that, not necessarily at educational level, even though that would be great. Obviously, we should raise the floor of all of our basic education in America, which we've talked about multiple times on the podcast. But I don't think that somebody that doesn't understand basic science should be voting. I don't think somebody that doesn't understand the Electoral College should be voting. I don't think that somebody doesn't understand the way they count votes should be voting. There's a whole bunch of things that people have no idea what they're actually voting on. Like if you're literally not even reading what you're voting on, should you be voting? I don't think so.
Right. So those who don't know, but just look and figure out what the party is saying, and they vote that way. Right.
Yeah.
Just follow the herd.
Yeah.
Ideally there'd be, and we talked about this, more civics classes in high school, a better understanding of how our government works. Did I ever tell you about the like mock Congress stuff that we did at my high school?
No, not at all.
So that was the first like spark, I guess, for me that really made this thing that I was super interested in. And so I think you couldn't actually participate until junior year. And so for your junior year and senior year, you were participating. But during your sophomore year and during my senior year, we brought freshmen up to the high school. So then we were finally like all 9th, 10th, 11th. Before that, it was like a junior high thing. It was weird. So we only had 8th, 9th, 10th. Or sorry, we only had 10, 11, 12 in high school for when I started there. But then my senior year, we added 9th grade to it. So then freshmen and sophomores could observe and like be in it, but they weren't participating. And everybody had some kind of a civics class, some kind of a history class, or some kind of a social studies class of some kind. And in any of those classes, they would all draw basically on a certain day. Everybody drew jobs, and you would either be like a member of the House or a member of the Senate. And then within those, you would be assigned to committees. You would have someone who would end up being Speaker of the House, someone who would end up being the President pro tempore, like all this other stuff. So you got assigned every single role and built out the entire government within the school. And then for 3 days, the whole school literally did nothing but operate like they were our government. So we would go into this one auditorium that would be the House, or we started by meeting in committees, right? And then everybody's assignment that was basically kind of part of how you got evaluated was everybody had to write a bill. Everyone had to write a bill on something. And then those would all get passed out to certain committees that would make sense within what the topic was. You would then have those discussions and vote in committees, and only the things that got out of committee would even make it to the floor, right? So then those things get discussed, voted on, and then they switch houses. So we're doing all of this stuff, and then it would go to the president, and they'd veto some of them and send it back to us. And you think we're going to get all these high school students to be able to pass 66%. Even then, you can't get up to. Sometimes we could. But it was interesting to basically, we full on implemented it, and everybody learned. And you did that every year for like 2 or 3 days. So the freshmen who were just observing, that's their first exposure to it. And then by the time you're a junior and senior, you're participating. Like, you really have a good understanding of it. It's not that hard. I mean, it took a lot of work. I guarantee teachers, like, especially those who are like other classes are like, what are we doing? Like I'm falling behind in my schedule of stuff that I need to teach, but they also just know this is going to happen every year and plan for it. I think that is
that's pretty
something that
awesome.
needs to happen.
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, we had nothing like that where I went to school, but that is pretty awesome because I don't think that people put enough value in learning about our government. But it's like the government has so much power over every single citizen that why wouldn't you pay attention to it? It's like it it even the little things, just like literally getting in your car and driving somewhere. Guess what? The government built your roads. Like, and so if you don't understand how that works and like how your tax dollars, go, the way that they transfer your tax dollars into actually making a road, like, and then you're like, well, why do I have so many potholes? It's like maybe if you understood your local government better and you paid attention, like what actual things you're voting for, or if you're voting at all, maybe you should vote on these certain things. It's like in the bills are there, you can read them.
Yeah.
They send you a booklet, and you can also look it up online. It's super easy. No, they most
And I
people
mean,
are
and
just
that's
disenfranchised. Go ahead.
okay.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
See, I mean, and that's a single point of that one event.
Yeah.
Like there are so getting in the car, right? Seat belt,
Yeah.
airbag, all regulations. Check out our episode on regulations versus deregulation, right? Like there is so much of that stuff is all controlled by decisions that we pass off to someone else to decide for us, because most of what we're doing is representative, right? We select the people who make these decisions for us most of the time, is the way our system works, rather than doing everything to direct voting. I know some things have to, right? Like we do vote and personally help make certain decisions, but a lot of stuff happens without us getting involved, other than selecting the person to go do that for us. And most of us don't even know who we're choosing.
Yeah. Most people don't even know like who their representative is, like at all. They might know who their mayor is. Not even that. I mean, I can't really name my mayor right now. I know my representative is. I know who that is, but the mayor, I don't really know. I forget. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's a mayor, like, so the local community ones, I would like to say, I think, because they do have more impact on your day-to-day activities, would be more important to know.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that that's, less visible, the fact that they spend less time like on national news stuff or whatever, it's harder to know. But we should all definitely know who our national representatives are, especially since they're few in number, too few in number. Man, I'm talking about all of our episodes here. Go back to our very first episode talking
Yeah.
about proportional representation. So there should be way more. And then it'd be a little harder to maybe know who all of them are, but you would probably know yours because they probably literally represent like your building or your block, because there'd be so many people, especially in like the cities. I thought about that when I think about the numbers sometimes. Like there are probably buildings in New York City that would have a representative. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I'm basically a representative of this city who have several thousand people living in it, because it's a huge, like massive tower of apartment complex kind of thing.
But the person, whoever represented you, though, you would assume, well, you would know that they knew like what your day to day life is like. Like it's not a whole swath of people, it's just like your building or your block or whatever. And whoever lives in your building or your block, they are definitely at least to like the block level. Even the building level, obviously, it's even more constrained. But on the block level, like you're all in the same basic economic status. You know what I mean? You're all paying the same sorts of bills. So yeah, I think having more is a good thing. Because if you talked to me like 5 years ago, I'd have been like, more people in the government? That's stupid. Like, please stop.
Yeah,
But
that's bad.
I think we need to reduce our government in other ways. Like, there's definitely other like organizations that need to go away, in my opinion, because they're some of them are redundant. But I don't think the House of Representatives is not one of them, as far as like the way you broke it down. So
Yeah, and I mean, and you think about it too. It seems like, and I bet initially it would probably too, right? If suddenly we put all these people in there and then paid them for that first couple of years, that first Congress probably, the cost would be an increase, right? Like, hey, we suddenly have all these people and we're paying them to do this job. But the difference would be a lot of those people there would be looking at this stuff and going like, wait a minute, why are we spending money on this? Why are we doing it this way? Where is this money going? Because that's a good question I have all the time. Is like, okay, here's what we allocated to it. Like we talked about in the last one, here's the dollar amount for this program. Here's the amount we're giving to each citizen, which equals this. And this is the total amount. Like, where did the rest of this go? Where did that go? I want to know where that went. No, we're not doing that. We're going to take this and put it over here. Like, more people looking at it means the ability for more scrutiny. Will all of them look at it? No, right? So we're talking about those bills that are thousands of pages long. Probably still the same number of representatives are not going to look at it.
Yeah.
But by putting more there, you're going to have at least a couple more people in the House who are interested in really doing a good job and doing the best that they can while they're there, reading all of those things and trying to fix this stuff. Because why else would they be there? Because that's the way I look at it. But I don't know that that's right, because it's altruistic. It's me thinking like me there, what I would do, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to think that way.
No, I mean, I think when both of us talk about some of the things that we mentioned, yes, they will cost more money from taxpayers, for sure, right? But I also think that both of us know that there's like so much fraud, waste, and abuse in our government right now that we could definitely tackle alongside. Honestly, as much fraud, waste, and abuse that I've seen in just my life as being a Marine and a military contractor, from those two things alone, I can tell you we could definitely come up with enough money to pay for a significant increase in the House of Representatives and to pay for a whole bunch of other programs, because we're wasting a shitload of money on just the DoD.
Yeah.
And
okay.
One, I think also when you come down to the local level, like actually holding people accountable to like where your money's going for like basic like road programs and tolls and stuff like that, it's like we're wasting a bunch of money, but nobody's being held accountable. So I think if we held government entities and individuals accountable for like first of all what they owe in taxes, and then second of all like where they're actually spending money as a government entity, if we held them accountable, then I think we would have like vastly more money to be available for other things that are more important in my opinion. So
well, and like inherent in that concept of having that many representatives was this idea that we're now remote doing the House, right? We're not going to be able to put all those people in a building in Washington, D.C.
And that's stupid anyway. We went through this. Decentralized.
So that's kind of where that conversation goes, right? We're like, okay, so now, say the representatives that represent the districts, and I'm going to say districts now instead of just one, because there's maybe one or two that cover San Francisco and the Bay Area that you're in, right? Right now, representatives. Instead, imagine 20, 30, 40 of them who are technically from that city's area who get to stay there and advocate for the city at the national level, but also hold the city accountable for the national money that they're funding there. They're right there. Like, hey, all 50 of us, we're going to go down to the mayor's office right now. We're going to meet there, and we're going to talk to them about how they're allocating this money that we're pushing to them. And you literally have 50 representatives from the House of Representatives just standing outside your office right now like, oh, geez, the mob is here. But they're like the mob at the national mob. Like, well, it's like reverse, it flips it.
Yeah. No, it's a great. I think it's a great concept. It's a great concept.
So I think that part of that ties to it, but tying that directly to it, any position in any of the spots in government would require that service.
Yeah.
So in order to vote, you would need to have done some of the service we're going to talk about here in a second. In order to run for any political position, that would also be a requirement. So I don't know if I kind of do, because I see the fear that was there, the reason to say that the president of the United States had to be like a natural born citizen, like it has to be someone who's not an immigrant, just because the position itself is potentially like one that people would try to do some kind of infiltration thing on, potentially like put somebody here young, like build them up and brainwash them all the way to do it. I can see like the weird, crazy theories where that can happen, but all the rest of them, since they're not, I'm still fine with it. But I also think that having service as a requirement for those positions gives us that like understanding of what it's like to actually do service for other people.
Yeah, and so in America right now, you can have completed your service in the military as a foreign-born person and still not get citizenship. I thought that's weird as fuck to me, because it's like, how could you possibly prove yourself more loyal to America? Like, there's no other way.
Right, and so it does simplify the process by comparison, if that's something you're interested in doing. I've known quite a few who were either from Puerto Rico and did some kind of the service in order to like change the way their citizenship works, because theirs is a little different. You get the full normal citizenship stuff instead of like the territory citizenship, and it's the same for Guam. But then several I've served with were from either like Central America or South America,
Yeah.
or a couple of like
I had an Australian guy.
I was gonna say Middle Eastern too. Like there's a couple like there was a Syrian like who did serve, and definitely some Israelis. There's a couple others that like, and it does help them conduct the citizenship stuff. Like you have a different timeline, and your application falls into a different category, and all of those things basically by being in the service, you have to do it while you're on active duty. By being active duty in the service, it gives you like the ability to kind of process a little faster, but it's definitely still not an automatic thing.
Yeah, to me it should be automatic. I mean, listen, it
Like, do you want to? Okay,
yes,
cool.
then do it. Yeah, it's so silly to me. If people want to talk about, oh well, somebody, all right, on a base level, especially I can only speak for the Marine Corps, obviously, so can you. When it comes down to like knowing about the U.S., we're all indoctrinated from boot camp. We're all indoctrinated. All right, we're all drinking the Kool-Aid. So like very few people fall through the cracks. Some do. You're right, but those people that fall through the cracks, they're usually naturally born Americans anyway. So the possibility of them being natural born Americans or foreign born Americans, like it doesn't matter. So it's the same amount of actually it's probably less of a risk if they're foreign born, in my opinion. But there's no risk. There's no added risk to like making them automatic citizens. Like obviously they care about the country, so let's just make them automatic citizens.
So I would do the same. I would say like the same stipulations would apply where it's a certain time frame, like after you're completed 2 years of service.
Yeah.
Like the same as we would say would be the same for this next part of the program. As soon as that time is completed, citizenship done. Right? Yeah, you got it. As long as you want to, because some people come serve and go back home.
Yeah, they
and
do.
just did it to learn something to bring that back to their country, which is also great for them. But
yeah, well, it's weird to me because there's people that I know that have gotten like clearances, and they don't get citizens. I'm like, what? How do you? That doesn't make any sense.
access to stuff.
Yeah,
but we don't let you just be here.
Yeah, it's so dumb.
Yeah. So during our break, I started trying to look up the women registration for the selective service thing we talked about.
I was looking it up too as you were talking.
It is still not a requirement.
Yeah, that's what the conclusion I came to as well. That's quite
so
strange.
There was a report published in 2020 by a 49-member bipartisan commission saying the time is right to change it. They went to 42 different cities in 22 different states. Had basically like town halls, this commission did, and talked to everybody and to kind of gauge how the country would feel if they recommended that change, and said that the country is definitely ready for that. But they still haven't done it. You go to the Selective Service like website, and it still says as of 2016. So yeah. I appreciate them, updating their website regularly. There is no decision that's been made for the Selective Service to require women to register. What's funny is the first link that comes up when I searched for it was an ACLU link saying that requiring men to and not women to is sex discrimination.
It is.
Yeah. The second link was, but we have managed to publish something specifically that says if you were born a male and do a sex change to become female, you're still required to register for the sex service. We managed to publish that, but not to just change it to include everybody. Like,
yeah, listen, it should. If we're gonna be in the world of, how do I put this sort of more politically correct? What's up?
In the world of that face, like.
Yeah, well, I mean,
how do I do this without stepping on toes? Like,
yeah. If you want true equality between men and women, which don't get me wrong, it's difficult to achieve, but if you want that sort of equality, it comes down to like shit like this, of like men are required to do these certain things that women are not. I mean, listen, if you're on a ship and the ship crashes and it's going down, who's getting saved? It's the men and women. I'm sorry, the women and children first, and we all know this. Like, and there's gonna be no complaints by anybody. It's like, well, what about the man's value? So when you talk about men, are usually like traditionally throughout all of history, are more disposable than women and children. So that's just a fact. So if you want to talk about equality, it comes to like things like that. And when you talk about like jobs, all the reports that I've seen of like why like men get paid more, is because we take different jobs. If you want to talk, most of the women that I've talked to, like, hey, do you want to, do you want to be like an underwater welder? They're probably going to say no. Probably. I mean, I'm not going to say no like in general, but those are higher paying jobs, and like jobs that are riskier, they're higher paying jobs. If you talk to a man, like, hey, do you want to be a nurse? Or they're probably going to say no. Probably. I'm not saying all because there's female or male nurses, but
Yeah.
just generally speaking,
And I'm sure there's female underwater welders, but it's
yeah,
probably like 10%.
yeah, it's very few, but it's like
All it.
there's a choice that you make, like early on, of like shit that you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. And one of the things that I want to bring up is like, I understand why women would be less likely to take on more dangerous roles. Is because you can become pregnant and carry children. So yeah, it makes sense to me, like on a basic level, like, hey, probably don't take on as much danger if you can. If it's a choice, take on less danger, especially if you're gonna become pregnant. If that's a possibility. So that makes sense to me.
And there was an article published, and she kind of got some flack for it too. I think she was a captain, a female Marine captain that was pushing so hard, right, and was like basically pushing to the physical stuff, like making sure that she could compete at the level that she wanted to do all of the stuff that like an infantry officer is supposed to do, and it made it so that she couldn't have kids at that point. So she got to the point where talking to the doctor, it's like, you're not going to be able to have kids if you stay where you are right now, because you've physically changed your body to the point that you can now do these other things that you want to do. And again, this was her case, and she just was explaining that story. And yeah, a lot of people were like really frustrated. They were like, I'm just telling you my story, and I still think I want to do this, and I can do this for the next couple of years and make that choice myself. But it just does show like it's very different. And again, that was her. The same as we talked about diet when we were starting here, like that's how her body responded, and someone else might be able to do both, right?
Yeah.
But it definitely is a stress on your body when you do a lot of the stuff that we're doing, and I imagine that additional stress would be difficult on a fetus. So it's
I think that's what most people kind of just like they kind of disregard that women can. I'm not saying should or are always going to, but they can get pregnant. And if you do, then you have to worry about a whole different life. And it's like, I can't assume what that's like, but I know that, there's definitely like a physical disadvantage if you do become pregnant. So.
But with selective service registration specifically, to tie us back to kind of what we started with this, I will agree with the statement here, and I do think it should be registration for all.
Yes.
Because what they state here, and this was kind of like one of those, like the public statement at the end of the thing, was this is a quote from Deborah Wada, who was the panel's vice chair. And it says, a qualified and capable force means we must extend the registration requirement to all Americans, men and women. And the reason you make that statement is to say, if we're all required to show up at some point to get interviewed and get screened to then potentially serve, we're going to find those ones we can put into really critical roles who have specific skills that could really help us out. Like I imagine the stuff that I do, right? I guarantee there's some HF like radio wizard out there who's a female that if we go into a major war conflict and we had selective service like this and they came and interviewed and like, what skills do you have? I'm like, I work for this radio company and I, do all this up. Like, yes, we should definitely bring you in and help us train Marines how to do this. And we can make sure that we have one of these amazing radio wizards, and so to miss out on the opportunity to interview someone who could serve in specific roles like that, it seems like we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. So
yeah, I mean, and even with like even more sort of combat orientated roles, like I know some chicks that are badass. They're badass. You know what I mean? And they could serve in those more combat served roles.
Hell of a lot more badass than I am. Like
so they're there. It's just there's not a lot, but they are there.
But I wouldn't, and I think this is what we're kind of the core of the discussion is that. But I wouldn't limit my options because there's only a few. So why? No, like it's worth the time and effort.
Yeah, it's
especially if they want to do that, to provide them with the opportunity to perform the same. Like no, it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, it's still a person that can, as long as they have the same standards. So that's another thing that I want to differentiate especially when it comes to like combat roles. They need to have the same standards as males. So
yeah, and I would agree even on like regular fitness tests. If there was just a standard that is like it's all the same, and if you do better than this, then you get it, rather than having like male and female numbers for stuff. It's frustrating and it's a tough argument, because it would then go back to kind of the others that saying that they won't get promoted as fast because they will inherently have lower scores because they're not as strong. Like you're now talking into your own thing. Then I don't know. It's just
it's a weird. It gets into like a weird area, but at the end of the day, just for everybody, that's like why we're trying to like avoid certain things. Saying is like, listen, as I can say it as like I'm not active anymore. But if I got shot and somebody had to pick me up and move me somewhere, I need somebody to pick me up and move me somewhere. All right. Whether the person's a 124-pound male or female, I need you to pick my ass up and fucking move me. And if you can't, then there's a problem.
So I've advocated for one specific change to some of our fitness test stuff on that specific metric, which is that right now, actually you got out before the CFT started, right?
Yeah, but I know about the CFT. Yeah.
So in the CFT, there's a portion where you do a fireman's carry, right? So you've done this portion of the circuit, you've gone down, you pick up whoever your partner is, you drag them backwards for a while, stand them up, and then put them into a fireman's carry and carry them back 50 yards to the other thing, and then set them down, pick up ammo cans, and go. So the rule right now is you have to get somebody who you're going to drag and fireman's carry who's within plus or minus 5 pounds of you. So they're basically your body weight, and you're going to carry them.
Yeah.
So that it can be this fair fitness thing. I was like, no.
Yeah.
I want it to be a dummy, like literally a body dummy that is the standard all across the Marine Corps. Every single S3 who does training for us has the exact same dummy, like 3 or 4 of them sitting in some locker somewhere, right? That weighs like 175 pounds. Call it that. Somewhere in the middle. So that maybe even a little more than that. 185. I don't know. Something that we can figure out what the average is. Say that's going to be the weight. So because it makes it real, the 150-pound skinny dude who can run really fast on the PFT, he's not going to be able to carry that dummy very easily.
Yeah.
But he's also not going to be able to carry my ass when he needs the fireman's carry me. So it makes it a valid test. Like he may then wake up and go, I probably do need to put a little more muscle on so that I can actually carry my buddies in case one of us gets injured. But then the like 240-pound freaking brick shit house, like that dude's going to be like, pick up dummy, like run it down the field and like set it down. Like,
exactly.
Okay, well that dude crushes that, but how many pull-ups do you think he's doing?
Yeah.
How fast do you think he's running 3 miles?
Yeah.
Probably not that much. And some of them are like just still really good at that. So then you go, can he be on my team when we go somewhere? I want to make sure that person picks me up and goes. So like, and that's not just saying he or she, like that could still be a female that's just that ripped, ready to go carry you, like totally possible. It's just my experience has been mostly that's just this huge dude. You're like, oh my God. Some bouncer probably at the bar. That dude.
Yeah.
Like,
I agree.
6.5 feet tall.
Well, and even if it's just like, if it's a dummy where somebody's like, even drastically, the weight difference is that drastic where like the dummy is like say 180 pounds, but the person weighs like 150 or 140 pounds. Like maybe have like, maybe not fireman's carry, but at least drag, but with a penalty. You know what I mean? Like with the CFT penalty. Like if you can still drag them, within a certain time frame to somewhere, at least you got them out of the fucking area. You know what I mean? But ideally, fireman's carry.
Yeah, I mean, so like, say it's a I don't care. You drag from there to there, which is the first part. Like, get them out of this spot, and then however you get them from there to there, that's up to you. Yeah. Just so you know, the fastest way is fireman's carry.
Yeah, it is.
If you just keep on dragging, you're gonna be burned out. It's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you, like, even just you drag them about, actually, I guess so it's a more than 50-yard fireman's carry. It's probably like 60, because I think you do a 10-yard drag. That 10-yard drag is what floors you. Like, just dragging that person back out of the hot zone is what it's supposed to simulate, is the one thing that most certainly, like, completely floors your body. You're like, you were just smoked from dragging that person across the ground. So,
I gotta try doing that sometime.
It's pretty fun. It's a good event.
Well, I've done it in like.
I coach people try to do it sometimes. So.
I've done dragging in jiu-jitsu. Like we've had people with like gis on now would like collar drag them for like a while. Yeah, but it's different. I'm not active anymore, so I've never done the CFT. I wonder how I'd do now as a 41-year-old old guy. So
our numbers are a little different, but yeah. They give us a little bit of leeway. Although I did just find out like at 39, not 40 yet. So the pull-ups numbers went up. I still don't drop back down to 20 until next year. Like, so I still have to do 22.
Oh, you have to, there's 22 pull-ups. Did you know? Wow.
It's, the like 19 and 20-year-olds have to do like 24 for a
Holy
max.
shit. All right.
Yeah, it's gone up.
Well, it's crazy. It's crazy because I could do more pull-ups when I got out of the Marine Corps than when I was in. So
Hmm.
like, I did P90X, and I was doing like 40 pull-ups on that program, and I was just like, this is easy now. Like, oh, what the
Yeah.
fuck? Like, I don't. How whatever the Marine Corps is doing to like teach how to do pull-ups, I was like, and I was doing like not fucking Kevin pull-ups. I was doing Marine Corps pull-ups, like dead fucking, all the way extended, doing like 40, and I was just like,
Yeah.
but I think the way that we were taught in the Marine Corps, like what we focus on, is little. Sometimes it's hit or miss. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I'll say too, P90X is a really good system
yeah,
if you
yeah.
follow it.
I
Yeah.
thought it was a joke until I did it a couple times, and yeah, that's when I learned how to get into yoga. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Between so it's gonna be the two that you don't either didn't even know what that was when you started, or think that's not for getting strong.
yeah,
Yoga and the plyometrics, like those
yeah,
two, freaking destroyed me. I was like, oh
yeah.
my god, like
Plyo's
you're just
brutal.
jumping back and forth for plyo, and suddenly like the next day I'm like, my legs are just shot.
Yeah,
I'm so tired. It's crazy.
yeah.
Um, so the second part of this, and I think we're at second, and I may have kind of made it three parts, I guess, is that I don't think service needs to be military service for that citizenship concept. So we did talk about two like groups that would be a part of our country at that point. You'd have residents who have access to everything and they are a part of our system. They're residents in the country. I would say there would still be a process if you're like an immigrant to become a resident, and then you could then potentially get into a service role, do your 2 years, sorry, in a service position, and then have full citizenship and can now vote. Um, so I think the issue that I have most of the time with it is I know I'm not going to be able to come up with the list by myself of all of the roles that would fulfill that requirement as a service role. So I think there would need to be like a system for applying to the government to have like a service that you run become recognized by the government as a service role. So like if you start a nonprofit organization that does a specific thing or whatever, you should be able to, as a part of that nonprofit organization application, say, hey, my organization does these things. Could 2 years worth of working for me in this organization count for all of my employees to become citizens? And I would think in most cases, especially with nonprofits, like it probably would be in most cases. Um, but I get me and you sitting down for a week couldn't come up with the comprehensive list of every single type of job that could possibly qualify. So that's why I think that part of it would need to be a bureaucratic system sort of that is an application to become one of those things.
Well, I think if we came down with like we can probably come up with a list
Yeah.
of like requirements. That's definitely possible within like a week or so, and then
Like
have
does
people
does
apply.
your company do this or this? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
like like do you serve your community? Uh, I guess. Well, I guess that was my first one, right? Like, how do you serve your community? That
Yeah.
basically like checklist down like how do you serve your community in like a very specific form, and I think that that would be an easy way to kind of like pick and choose like which ones would qualify or not, and maybe it would come down to like a committee of like, hey, if they
Yeah.
meet these certain requirements, then they're good, they're in.
And that's what I think. So like, yeah, the form would kind of ask you questions. And it's like if at any point in this you said no to any of these questions, like don't send this form in because you're not going to get selected.
Yeah,
But once you do, then it gets reviewed by that committee or whatever it is.
yeah,
Some similar or some kind of government organization would have to be created, which again, people don't necessarily want because that means people who are getting paid to do these jobs. But I do think that this is an important one. Um, this is the equivalent on a national level as a society level of that mock Congress concept, right? This is us all saying like this knowledge and this experience is important to being a part of our society. Um, and I would say too, so something would need to be part of it too, is that you don't have to be 18 years old for those 2 years to start. Like if you started working that in high school at 15 or 16 years old, whatever the state's law is for like the earliest you can start
working
working,
age, yeah,
if you get your 2 years out of the way before you're 18, you're good. Like that time is already done.
yeah. I totally agree because yeah, you can definitely put in work, before
Mm-hmm.
before you're an adult. So I mean, we all work for, well, most of us, I would say. I don't, won't say all. Most of us work
Yeah,
before we're
they all-
adults. Yeah, I mean, I started working when I was like 13. So
I'll say me and you and the people probably listening to this podcast all day, but
yeah, yeah. Some people listen to this podcast might not ever work real work. You know, it's possible. I mean, you could be a trust fund baby, which is fine. I mean, your parents got you through it, I guess.
well, yeah, I don't know. I'm too optimistic sometimes. Like I think the best of people in most cases, it's kind of a how they tell you on those like job interview questions, like what would you say is one of your weaknesses? Like give a weakness that doesn't ever sound like a weakness. Like
Yeah,
say something super positive, but you do like to the extreme, so it becomes this negative thing. You're like, okay, it's not really telling me negative, but thanks, I appreciate it. That's kind of one of mine. It's like I generally believe other people are often like so good or so much better than they actually are that then becomes like kind of a problem for me in certain cases.
that's what my girlfriend says about me.
Where I
Yeah,
probably shouldn't trust people as much as I do.
yeah, yeah.
I'm,
I totally
I'm too
understand where
good
you're
of
coming
a
from.
too trusting of a person. Like,
I mean, I'm trusting to a certain level. Like, there's people that I can write off like right away, you know. But there's some people, yeah, where I like to give the benefit of the doubt to people. Like,
yeah,
I get, I will let you show me how if you fucked up. You know what I mean? But you got to show me you fucked up before I usually pass some sort of judgment. Like, I'm usually just not like, oh, you know, I'm not going to give you any kind of chance. But prove to me that you know you're a bad person.
and that's generally my belief. And I am probably willing to, after a period of time, like give someone a second chance. Like, okay,
Right.
you're saying, and you've done something maybe to try to prove that you want to try again. Cool, try to redeem yourself. That's fine. Because I think people generally have the best intentions. They might be looking out for their own interest, depending on whether they're in a scarcity or an abundance mindset.
Again,
Um,
message.
Mass, check out the store.
Yeah.
Um, but like, I am going to change that shirt. I'm going to make it a little bit cooler. Trust me. So hold off for a second, but it'll be there. Um, or get one now, and then you'll have the original.
Yeah, those are worth more, right?
It'd be short run. Yeah, because it won't be the way it is going forward. But I do think that people generally have good intentions. They might be kind of self-driven, self-interested in order to try to get to a spot where they are able to feel like they've moved into probably level 3 of Maslow's hierarchy. They feel comfortable with all of the needs, 1 and 2, but then are in like 3rd level. Like once you're there, you can then really be external, right? So I think most people have good intentions, but sometimes are misguided.
Yeah. Yeah, getting to that, like going up that level of, you know, Maslow's hierarchy, like it's very difficult for people to even understand like where they even land on that like pyramid. And then like
Yeah.
I think most people think that like they're doing okay because their bills are basically paid, but it's like, well, like if you lost your job today, like what would happen to you? Like how long would you last? Would it
Yeah.
be days? Would it be weeks? Would it be months? You know, and then why is that? You know, it's like those are problems that people don't think about it because they're difficult things to think about. But then once you get to a point to where you don't have to worry about that anymore, that's when you're actually climbing the pyramid. Like once you're like, oh well, you know, my bills are no longer an issue.
Yeah.
That's when you meet some modicum of real freedom, as far as I'm concerned.
When you what was it we were talking about that one time? It was like, I honestly don't even know how many subscription things I pay for it sometimes. I'm like, wait,
Yeah,
what just came out? What was that one? Oh,
yeah.
okay, it's that.
Once it's covered, it's like once you can turn on auto pay for like the vast majority of your shit. You know what I mean?
You're at least at level 3.
Yeah.
You're
You're gonna go.
yeah. Yeah, it's just so that's kind of where I go with that, is that I generally am a little too trusting on that. So my concern with the idea of like an application to become an organization that counts as getting credit for becoming like a citizen is just that system becomes corrupt, right? And then suddenly McDonald's serves its community because they provide food to the community. They do. They provide jobs for people who are there. It's interacting with your customers. You're concerned about like, am I providing them with a good quality of food and these other things? and suddenly like that qualifies when the goal of that organization is just to make money.
Yeah, so I
How
think
do we?
what you covered that with like the whole saying that you have to be a nonprofit. So I think that would drastically cut down those issues. That was a great idea.
Mhm.
My girlfriend actually had an idea, like she's talking about this years ago, because she was a program manager. Now she's doing training, but she was like, you know what, the government just needs like program managers, like to like sit down and like actually oversee programs and like when they're fucking up, like actually come in and like, hey, this isn't working right. Like we need to change these things, but we have no like real program managers. We have no real oversight because the oversight committees, they're kind of toothless right now,
Yeah.
and we still have lobbying, which is basically bribery. And if as long as we have lobbying, which is basically bribery, in place in America, we're just gonna spin our wheels with like anything even close to like what we're talking about, because like that lobbying will permeate into the people that are overseeing what we're trying to accomplish, and so that's like one of the things that we'd have to eliminate.
So I think lobbying needs to be a whole topic.
Okay.
But I did want to make one point on it, but I think we'll have to like expand this conversation because I do think lobbying has enough information in it and enough of it is enough of a problem the way it's being run right now. Um, but like many things we talk about, like it had to have started with some good intentions, right? Like why was it there? It was in order to make sure that certain groups had the ability to have their voice heard by Congress in order to make sure they get things through. So like I always think of like workers unions are a pretty strong lobby, right? So there's certain lobbying groups that represent different workers unions.
Yeah.
And those are definitely a powerful group that's there. And do I think that it's wrong that these workers are fighting to make sure that these unions are fighting to make sure that their workers specifically are protected? I don't. I think that that's good. But then it's probably all of the second and third order effects that weren't considered whenever those rules were passed that haven't been able to be fixed because the lobbies are keeping them happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, the most effective lobbying groups are probably not union groups or anything that has to do with the people. That has to do with corporations, and that's the main problem. So I think if, like, okay, I'll give a caveat, all right, because obviously what you said was very valid. Like, if it's a union group, even though I don't agree with unions, like hardly at all, but I understand the point. And I understand they gave American workers, like 40-hour work weeks and vacations, like very valid things. Um,
Got us up to number 30.
yeah, yeah. Number 30, Jesus Christ. That's that should be a T-shirt as well, by the way. Anyway,
just that hashtag 30.
yeah, hashtag we're 30. Anyway, with all those things said, like I think that actual corporations lobbying for corporations for their interest is wrong. Like, yeah, a union has like obviously on some level actually trying to protect workers, even though they're making a profit sort of off of that because you have to pay union dues. I used to be in union, so I know all about union dues. But yeah, I don't think you should have corporations that are lobbying and paying for, these people that represent us, like millions of dollars a year, or even sometimes billions of dollars a year, to get a corporate interest across. A corporate interest is not an American interest. Any corporate interest, if you're a publicly traded company, you're all about profits. That's your entire goal in America because we're a capitalist country, right? Your entire goal is to make profits. It's too. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think, yeah, and,
Okay.
and there's some benefits to that, and I think it's just a balancing act, right? And we talk
Yeah.
about like anything that's pure is not real. First off, it doesn't exist, and is generally not a good idea. So it's a balancing act between that ability to seek those profits in the right places, and then the ability to say those things don't bleed into this stuff. Like this stuff over here is not allowed to touch that. So
Well, yeah, and I think it's weird when we talk about like profits. 'Cause like I said before, like when you talk about any sorts of profits from corporations, we're literally talking about wage theft. Like that's what it gets into is wage theft.
yeah,
That's how you're making your profit. So, um, I don't think it's right that a corporation that is literally pulling off wage theft from their employees can take that wage theft and use that against their employees through lobbying
love.
money. You know,
Yeah.
it's wrong. It's a self fulfilling prophecy. You know, it's like it's cyclical, and it needs to end.
Do you have the ability to tell me, like right now, off the top of your head, the difference between like non-profit and then not for profit? I believe there is a difference between the two, right?
No, I don't know off the top of my head. No, we'd have to look it up.
Okay, that's something we may look up or see if I can get someone who's better with the that level of financial systems understanding and like
I have a
to
perfect
explain
guy.
because
I have a guy. I do. I was gonna have him on to talk about other financial matters. His name is Patrick. He's a good dude. He's a beer guy.
okay, yeah,
Let's have him on next season because I talked to him a couple of months ago actually about coming on the podcast
okay,
to talk about some financial means. So yeah, let's have him on next season to talk about stuff like this.
yeah. I'm willing to like put on paper season 2, episode 1, like financial systems,
Well,
like,
actually,
and we just have them on for the first episode.
I,
No,
no. Actually, yeah, no, that's fine. I was thinking about like the last one of this season because I think the last one of
no,
this
no.
season is going to be about shit.
Don't spoil it.
Okay,
No
well,
spoilers.
it was requested by a viewer, so
Yeah. We'll talk about that one. I saw that. I saw that in the notes.
yeah.
So. But yeah, because to me, I was just thinking, like, if you're talking about unions are able to make any money, to me, that's wrong. A union should be a nonprofit organization. That's the only way they can register. That's the only way they can function. And the lobbying costs have to be a part of that. Like, if you're going to go and you're going to advocate, you have to account for all of those things in order to consider yourself still a nonprofit and still function as a union. But then I suddenly thought, I was like, wait, is there a difference between nonprofit and not-for-profit, and which one does it need to be, so that I make sure that they aren't like taking more money from us than they really need as a union member, right? So, anyways, that was where my brain started spiraling to.
No, no, that's good though because when I talk about unions, it gets into like the sort of libertarian part of me. So when you talk about like reducing taxes and like well, especially like the last episode we had, or maybe it was two ago, when I was bringing up Social Security, and you were like, "Nah, Social Security," because people should be
Yeah,
able to like,
last one.
yeah, they should be able to like do their own investments. You're right. Obviously, you're right. Because people should, but it's an educational problem, which is everything we talk about. It's kind of like in layers, right? But when it comes to like unions, to me, as a highly skilled worker, I'm like, look, listen, if I don't like my job, I'll just leave my job and I'll find a better job. But some people they can't do that. Like depending on your skill level, you might not be able to do that. So you outsource your buying power as a worker to an entity to do things on your behalf.
Yeah.
Which is to me it's strange, only because I'm at a certain skill level. But when I was at the lower skill level, it was amazing because I was 17 or 18 years old, working for UPS back in the late 90s, and I was getting paid $8.85 an hour, which back then was a lot, and I had full benefits. And anything over 6 hours was overtime. Anything over 8 hours was double time. And I was like, how is this legal?
Because you got a good union.
Oh, yeah. It was great.
But I mean, so it's like what it does is, like you said, it provides them with some kind of power when generally we would consider unskilled laborers or whatever to have like no leverage against the organization.
Yeah.
So what the company would say is if any one case, like you just said, like if I don't like working here, I'll leave. Well, it's an unskilled laborer. They'll replace you fast. One person, easy. Can I replace 600 people instantly by tomorrow? No. And I'm going to have to shut down and I'm suddenly going to lose profits. Okay, I don't want all of you to leave. What is it we want to deal? Let's find a way we can come to an agreement here. Meanwhile, can you guys keep working? So can just one of y'all come over here and talk to me about this? And that's how you get like union reps is that hey, they're gonna do that negotiation so that the workers still have the ability that he can be like, look, if you don't meet these requirements by Tuesday, we're all walking outside and we're gonna let everybody know how messed up it is to work here right now. So it gives them that little bit of leverage because most of those types of places, like the first one that comes to my mind is the one that originally got me to understand unions. There's like oh my god, I can't believe I can't think of the book, but it was an older book from basically it was told in the time of like it was either the early 1900s I think, and it's like a meat packing facility and people are getting hurt and all this other stuff. That's still happening in meat packing facilities. They are still going through like very, very unsafe working conditions, even though they have unions. So like, what is the union doing?
They're making money.
making money. So
Yeah.
they need to be protecting their people, and that's where that's where I'm getting frustrated with it. I think because I watched the John Oliver on meatpacking facilities, and I was like, what the heck?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the whole profit thing. It's like I understand that if you're a corporation, you want to make some profits, but when you're making billions or trillions of dollars a year and you're paying out bonuses to your executive branches and your managerial you know people,
Yeah,
meanwhile you have people that are getting paid less than $10 an hour, and but everything that you're getting all these bonuses and profits from is the worker. Like, why aren't you distributing the profits evenly across, or more evenly across your organization? Like, listen, don't get me wrong. I'm all with you of like, listen, the organization would not exist had it not been for like the person that made the company and the
yeah.
people that
Took that
manage it.
initial risk.
Yeah,
Took that initial risk and made that investment, whatever
yep,
it was. Yeah,
totally get that. But it gets to a point to where like, hey, listen, if you're making trillions of dollars, like you need to invest back in your company. When I say invest back in your company, that includes your workers. Like they're the reason why you're making these trillions or billions or even millions of dollars is because of their hard work. Like your hard work, sort of like your physical hard work, ended a long time ago. If you're a CEO or manager, it ended. Give the respect to your actual workers that they deserve through monetary means because they're putting their lives on the line. If you keep pushing them to do things that are harder and harder and less safe, like I mean, first of all, safety should be number one. Like definitely invest in your goddamn safety, or in your worker safety, and then invest in their actual earnings to keep them happy and safe where they're working, to not have a revolving door of workers. To me, it's like a no brainer. Like I couldn't imagine being a CEO of a company and making and like getting a bonus of like millions of dollars. Meanwhile, my basic worker is getting paid, you know, the minimum wage that was required by the state. It's a,
which isn't probably meeting their needs.
no, not at all. I mean, if I'm getting a bonus of $1 million, and depending on the size of the company, that's life changing to every worker in my. Even if I just distributed it out, like the $1 million bonus, that's life changing for them. Like, why wouldn't you want to keep them around? But that's me as a dumbass, I guess.
But again, that's kind of that mentality is the separate part of it, which I'm fine with people getting towards. But think about it this way too: if all that person has ever done, you mentioned the trust fund person, right? So if the child of a person who runs that company as a CEO has never had to do the work, has never participated in the civil service program, has not gone and like done time where they have to work, and the only work that they're doing is to help other people, to learn what it is to actually dedicate your time and your effort into helping others, right? You've never done that. So you don't get to vote. You don't have a say. You don't have a say in the system.
Oh, that's
You're not
great.
able to make decisions at the lobbying level. Like you're not the person who's going to go and make decisions. Then those of us who now did that and think about the welfare of other people, make the decisions, we'll put things in place to protect those people who are working. Um, my only concern would be if I think you mentioned it too, and it's kind of occurred to me just as I was saying this. Um, those people who like have that worker type job, like I'm just making a wage and I'm barely making ends meet. Do they have the latitude and leverage to move into a role that's potentially lower paying? I would think it shouldn't be. It should definitely meet a standard of living requirement. Um, to do this kind of service job, do I have that leverage? Like, do I have that latitude to be able to make that transition so that I can have a say? It concerns me that maybe we still marginalize people who don't have the money to, or like aren't in a position in their life to dedicate that kind of time. So we would just need to make sure that those roles and those jobs provide a wage that is able to like make sure that they can still live their own life, be above, at least in level two, functioning safely, and not necessarily, and then be worrying about level three.
You know what I'm gonna say, right? UBI.
UBI.
Yeah. That's this. This is literally what it's like. One of the main reasons what it's for is to give them the floor to like give them some sort of leverage. Like, listen, if you're working some shitty job and you don't like it, like you just leave and your basic needs are met.
So what if, okay, so I'm going to take UBI to level 2. Say you're doing one of these jobs, right? You, if you're in a role in a job that qualifies for civil service qualification for those 2 years, you automatically qualify for UBI version 2. Because we're talking about the other UBIs, all citizens, anybody who's here, you get a little bit of a stipend, make sure you have some money to spend.
Yeah.
UBI level 2 is kind of like my housing allowance or like COLA works. There's an assessment done for the region that you live in that you determine what the basic standard of living requirement would be, and the pay for any of those positions has to be at least that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because then you're like, it's based on real stuff, because living there is different than living here, is different than living in Wyoming.
Yeah.
And it's gonna sound bad, but like, say I work for the Park Service and I'm a Park Service ranger here at Joshua Tree National Park. Living in Joshua Tree is really expensive right now because all the Airbnb people are buying up all the properties and then renting them out for Airbnb.
Really? I didn't.
So if I want to buy
I didn't know that, but all right.
It's expensive in Joshua Tree, especially. So to buy like a small apartment would be expensive. Well, and that's assuming purchasing a property, not even just renting it. Renting is even worse. So then, you know, that analysis should be done compared to like someone who's in, you know, Arizona at a national park or in Wyoming at a national park, like working there, which is going to be weird for people because you'd be like, but I'm a park ranger for the national parks with 1 year's worth of service. Why am I not getting paid the same as the national park ranger somewhere else? But I think that system, once clearly articulated, would totally make sense.
Yeah,
or it's offset compensated the same way Mars is. Like there's just an additional one, like you have your base pay and then a local stipend kind of thing, like BAH is, or like COLA would be, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean you could definitely offset it with, you know, local and state taxes, like depending on where you live. So that'd be the
to hit acronyms. Sorry, to hit acronyms. I did use a couple. I just realized. So COLA is cost of living allowance for us, and then BAH is a basic allowance for housing. So based on where I'm living, I get a certain amount of money to pay for a house. Sorry, I realized I'm like, I'm just throwing acronyms out that people don't know.
I apologize as well because I knew what you were talking about, but obviously if you're a civilian that never served in the military, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. So thank you. But
were we talking about at one point where you said like there's something that I was talking to somebody else. So one of the key differences for those like transitioning is the use of acronyms. Like we use them a lot, and most civilian companies do not.
No, it depends on who you work for. Yeah. I almost said who I work for. Who I work for uses a lot of acronyms as well. I work for a large corporation. All right, it's pretty big. But yeah, they use a lot of acronyms. But yeah, some companies they don't at all, and it's so weird. And then once you don't use them, you kind of forget about them. Like there's been a couple that you've like said to me like in chat, I had to look them up, and I was like, oh, what the fuck, man.
I knew that one.
Yeah, I knew that one, 20 years ago. So,
I mean, you can just ask.
I'll look it up. I'm not gonna be a dumbass. I'll be done with my own mind, not to you.
So that's something I try to teach to people, and maybe it's a me philosophy, but I think it's a good philosophy, which is like never be afraid to ask the question.
Yeah.
Because all it's doing, it does two things. It shows the other person that you value their knowledge, right? For one, and this has to be. I tell it to like usually to the officers to humble themselves and be willing to ask the lance corporal what they just said meant.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Show me how to do that, because what you're doing is important. It allows us to accomplish our mission. I want to understand what it is you're doing. Can you show me how you do that? When you say it that way, especially, right? It's like, oh, this person's interested. They want to know what it is. And I've told them, but like also in the background of it, you're like, you're bullshitting me. That is not true. I want you to show me what you're doing, because then you can't fake it. You got to show me what's happening.
Yeah.
And then maybe they figure out, they're like, oh, okay, I said that the wrong way. I really meant this, and to see that, like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense. And you walk away like, I knew that you were wrong, but I wanted to know exactly what he was saying.
Yeah.
And it makes them feel like you value them, and it also helps you guys stay in an honest conversation. So never be afraid to ask the question.
That's a good point.
I will stop dudes, like other chief warrant officers or anybody else, like briefing something, like literally middle of a brief on a slide, talking through something, some air acronym. Sometimes I'm like, say, stop. What's that acronym mean? Okay, I know that acronym for a different thing, for a different system, so I just wanted to make sure I was keeping track of what one you're talking about. Okay, go ahead, continue. Like stopping a mid-stride. Like, tell me what that thing means. Okay.
No, I mean, I'll do that going forward because you know what's funny? I had some, what the fuck was it called? I just went through this goddamn training, inclusionary training.
No,
Um,
you mentioned it, yeah.
I didn't tell you, like, I'll tell you offline about what happened in this training. It's kind of funny. But anyway, going through like this inclusionary training, and it's just like understanding like when to ask questions and kind of like when not to, but use it to ask questions. So, but yeah, the acronym thing, it's kind of weird. Yeah, I guess I should have asked you, but it's just like the shit that I feel like if I forgot it, like I was like, this looks very familiar, but I
Yeah.
forgot. You know what I mean? But I could have just asked. It would have been way faster. But then, you know, this is
Yeah.
what it is. This is what it comes down to for me. Is that I feel like if I'm going to ask you to retrieve knowledge that I knew from the past, I'm putting the burden upon you to look up some shit that I can fucking Google.
Okay. Yeah.
That
So
for
that's fair
me.
enough because
Yeah.
I do use um, that kind of as an answer sometimes. So do you know what LMGTFY is?
LMGTFY.
Yeah. So there's a
Well, laugh.
website you can go to
Okay.
called lmgtfy.com.
Okay.
You can
No.
go there. You go there. And what it stands for is let me Google that for
Ah,
you.
gotcha.
And what it does is you can put in the search that someone asked you as a question on LMGTFY, and then you choose below it which search engine you want to actually send to the person, and you hit it, and then it brings up a page, and you can copy the link. You send them that link, like, oh, here's the answer to your question. What it does is it actually gives them like a video presentation of you go to google.com, type in your question, hit search, and oh, look, there's answers.
Yeah.
Like, why are you asking me a question that you know I don't know the answer to? I'm just going to Google that shit anyways. Why don't you just Google it? Why are you asking me?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as the reverse technical answer to that for me, which is probably one you might actually be too, is RTFM. It's like, read
Read
the
the fucking
fucking manual.
manual.
Why are you asking me a question I'm going to have to pull out the TM for, like this technical manual on a system? Like, no, I don't remember what the clocking speed for one processor on one particular type of system is. Like,
Well,
I
hold
could go
on.
look it up.
There's
So could you.
there's an important caveat here, is because people like me and you, we have a bunch of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And then for people like to ask us, I don't want to say stupid questions, but questions that are, fuck it, I'll just say it. It's just stupid. There's sometimes just stupid questions where it's like, listen, I don't want to look this shit up. You can look this shit up, and if you want to get to like the level that I'm at, you look shit up.
Yeah.
So
That's what I do a
yeah,
lot. Well, and generally, that level of a technical question is not relevant to the actual conversation. Like,
yeah,
why? It doesn't matter. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something else. And yes, I could look that up. And I know that what you're asking means that's not relevant. So moving on.
yeah. I'm telling
So
you,
it's just funny. Sorry, yeah. LMGTFY.
yeah. I do that stuff like I get people. So in my organization, I'm I guess a level 3 engineer now, which is kind of weird because I didn't really want to be a level 3 engineer, but I am. But I get questions from like L1, and they'll ask me like these silly questions, and I'm just like, I'm looking up stuff that you can look up. You know, these are all things that you should know. You know, or even people at level 2. And it's like these are things that you should know. I knew them when I was level 2. I don't know why you can't use the same tools that I'm using to look these things up. But also, I'm also getting paid way more than you. So you know, whatever. That's the offset. You know, when I think about it, you know, when you're in the Marine Corps, well, it is kind of the same because you're high up there on the one officer side. So it's a little bit of the same, but it's more drastic when you're on the civilian side. Like way more drastic.
Yeah. So like today we did a book discussion on kill chain, which we talked about.
Nice, great book.
With
Thanks for the
so
recommendation.
several lieutenants attended. Yeah, it's very good. I definitely recommend that anybody listening right now reads that book or listens to it. So we had like a kind of a open discussion forum, and we invited several lieutenants from the BCOC if they wanted to come and sit in and talk about it.
BCOC.
Yeah, so it's the entry level communications officers, so a bunch of lieutenants, like very new
Okay.
Marines, but officers, right? So a different mentality than my like entry level enlisted Marines. And it was funny because at one point one of the captains was like explaining to them, like, you're going to be tasked at a certain point to do something else by someone that will interfere with your ability to train your unit, right? Like you're like, hey, I have training planned, and this is what we're planning to do. Someone's going to ask for something that's going to make you stop that. you have to be comfortable enough with what you're doing with your plan to clarify with them and maybe say no or ask for a delay in their deadline or whatever it is so that you can still accomplish your training. And one of the other captains was like, never say no. Like, don't say no. Don't tell them you're not doing that. What you have to do is say like, and I agree with it because you have to reframe it. Because if you just tell someone no, you're going to get fired. So what you have to do is say like, hey, these are the things I'm trying to accomplish for our training. This is the thing you're asking me to do, which will cause me to stop that. Which one do you want me to do? Now you have to make a decision as the leader. Like, what thing do you want? Do you want the thing you just told me about? Or you want the thing that we want long-term over here? And I can do either one, but I just need to know so that I better understand what your objectives are. Shape it differently, right? I was like, okay, cool. So that, but being me, I was like, I have to caveat real quick. You all need to expect me to tell you no. I will just tell you no. Because I've been doing this for 22 years, and I will tell you that will not work.
Yeah,
what you are doing right now, what you are planning right now, what you are trying to say right now, that's just not going to happen. Yeah. So just expect me to tell you no. That's what you're paying me for. So.
I've been trying to explain to my partner, my girlfriend, which is where I keep going back to it again. When I say my partner, I always assume in the back of my head someone's gonna think that I'm gay. There's nothing wrong. If I was gay, I wouldn't really give a shit, obviously. But I have a girlfriend who's my partner. Been together for a long time. Anyway, I've been trying to get her to like understand the power of no in her job. Like when somebody asks you to do something, you can just say no. Like, it's like dare, but better.
Yeah.
Just say fucking, because the problem with
it's different for her though. It's different for her.
It is.
She's a female.
That's what I'm. We're trying to We're trying to work through it. To try to get her to like have, and it's weird because like to have a female have a more masculine mindset when it comes to these kinds of things, but it pays dividends when work starts eating into like your personal life, right? Is the power of no, and it comes down like the next book after you're done with AO, you should definitely read A World Without Email, because we've really messed up our lives as people that use email and instant messenger and stuff like that from work through unrealistic expectations.
Yeah. So have you read The Burnout Generation?
No, but it's probably
on the same lines where it's like you can never leave work. Like you're sitting on the couch, people can still reach you, and you can still be doing work. So why not just do work? And you just never stop. Yeah, that's what it's basically about.
Yeah, and so I've been doing IT for 23, 24 years now. At this point in time, I don't have OWA on my phone. I don't check emails on my phone. I don't have a work phone. When I'm done with work, I'm done with work. Like they know you can't, unless it's like a legit emergency. Like when somebody's out sick and there's like a Sev1, then yes, you can definitely call me and I'll pick up the phone if it's not on silent already. But I will come back to work to like help you out. But I've been working for this specific job for like over 10 years now, and it's happened maybe twice that's happened. But
so I do something similar. I have never had a work phone. I don't get my email from work while I'm at home unless I'm working from home, right? And then I might have it set up, but I'm not going to be checking it after normal working hours.
Yeah.
And it even is to the point like I know we have different phones because I have iPhone, you have an Android phone, but like, I have Do Not Disturb set up. So as soon as like 10 o'clock rolls around, I'm not going to hear a phone call or a message or anything. So I have to make sure to add at least, and it's only one person who is one of my supervisors or whatever. I will add my CO to my favorites. And if you call twice, like if you call and you call back within 5 minutes, it'll ring through on Do Not Disturb. And I have to brief them on this because most of them don't know. I'm like, hey, I will have Do Not Disturb turned on because I don't want to hear first off, I don't want to hear Discord go ding, 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 ding every 2 minutes.
Yep.
Discord will not stop chiming because it's people from all around the world.
And I've heard it on the podcast today.
You have? Yeah, I heard mine. I've heard yours. But like, yeah, if you call, it will not ring through. But if you call back within like 2 minutes or 5 minutes or something, it will ring through, and that'll let me know that's like a serious emergency you need me in. But like most cases, he doesn't need me there for.
Yeah, and this is the whole like email instant messenger thing. This is the problem that I'll lay out the basic premise. It's the unrealistic expectations that we put up on each other when it comes to like electronic messaging services. Is if I message you and then if someone messages me and I respond back to them in a reasonable amount of time, they're gonna expect that always. And if I keep responding back faster and faster, you're going to always expect for me to respond faster and faster. So if I'm working a normal 9 to 5, which I don't right now, and somebody messages me at like 8 o'clock at night, and I message them at 8:15, they assume that that's my working hours. That's the way any reasonable human being would assume that. Hey, you're available at 8:15, 3 hours and 15 minutes after your shift has ended.
Yeah, no.
And it keeps going like all throughout the night. And so what happens when you wake up in the morning? You check your email. Hundreds, maybe tens, maybe less, but you have emails that are waiting for you in your queue, and you consciously decide that, hey, I need to respond to these faster and faster, and the person that you're responding to is expecting you to respond faster and faster because they responded faster and faster. And it's this cycle of suck that we all are just used to. Not all, but most people are used to, of just like the cycle of suck.
Yeah, and imagine it on a global perspective too. I can imagine with the organization there's some of that. So like being in Japan and then receiving emails from Hawaii and California and the East Coast, and those are going to come through overnight. So when I come in the morning, I have to like respond to some. But I've gotten really good at the global awareness. Where I'm like, okay, well I'm going to respond to his first because he's still at work, and then they're asleep.
Yeah.
And then like let me go through and be like, I'll answer this one and then that one and then this one and then that one, because the time difference, those are the only ones that matter to do right now. Because like you said, I do try to consider where other people are, and it baffles me that in my community, especially like people who deal with space resources, like dude, that thing is global. Like it's covering a third of the earth. You can't imagine time zones. Like how is it not? Why is that so difficult for you? Like I did it 3 times today at least. I'm about to send an email or send a message on Teams, and I'm like, what time is it there? Okay, yeah, they're still there. Send the message. So you can schedule emails. Like people could do that if they were courteous of the other person's time.
Well, there's also I've used listen. This is me kind of being sort of an asshole. I've used this same concept as like a buffer, because it's asynchronous communication is what it really is, right? So there's times where I know like where I have a customer, and I'm looking up shit, and so I'll give them a response sort of at the end of either my day or their day as just like something to like give them like a bite, and then just to buy me more time. You know what I mean? It's like I need time for research, but that's the way asynchronous communication works. But it's not the most ideal way to communicate with people. Like,
no,
really, not ever, but for most situations, we're just used to it.
Yeah, if it's, and again, it depends on the person and your relationship with them. If it's literally professional work only and it's technical and all this thing, like I'll answer that when I get to it. But you know, a lot of my peers, we're also friends, so it's like, well, okay, what did you need, man? Yeah, I'll take a couple minutes. I can do that right now because I'm doing you a favor and you know that. And as long as that's the understanding between us, this isn't a normal work relationship where I'm going to do this for you every day.
Yeah.
And as long as that's the thing, that's fine. But yeah, because I get Japan calls from people, because like right now they're at work.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll get random Japan calls like 8 o'clock at night, like, hey dude, who did you talk to over here, or how did that work? I was like, okay, you're gonna want to call. Let me forward you his contact information. Let me, whatever it is, and I can help you out real quick, no problem. But they know that they're like asking me off time for extra things. So it's different.
All right, back on track. I'm sorry, that was like we do that though. Y'all used to this by now. This is episode 10. So.
10? No, 11. This is 11.
This is 11? Oh shit. Yes, it is. You're right. Yeah, because you edited 10.
One more. So after this, there's only one more episode for this season, and then we're going to take a break. So you will see a 4-week gap of published episodes after the next one.
Well, this is where it gets kind of weird, because we had a large buffer for this season. Like, how are we going to do it? Well, we'll figure it out. Fuck it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's as far as they're concerned.
Yeah.
Okay, 4 weeks worth of we're not publishing an episode.
Yeah.
And I may be overstepping, so tell me for sure. I think we've agreed between the 2 seasons, there will be a new YouTube channel, a separate podcast, and its own kind of separate isolated thing that will come up. So what you'll see is probably a drop a week before on the new channel, and we'll probably have to let you know somehow. So probably something will drop here to let you know to check out the new channel, and we'll put all of season 1 up on a whole separate place.
Yes, we definitely will. So I control the BTI side of everything, the Black on the Black Times Infinity, and yeah, this is not our normal niche for our the BTI podcast. But I want to make sure that like this worked, and it got pretty good numbers as far as I'm concerned compared to like the normal podcast. So people are picking up on that, so I feel very comfortable with like moving forward with like spinning it off to a separate thing and being successful with it. So yeah, the next season this will be on a different channel, but I'll definitely keep promoting it on my main for now channel. Well,
Yeah, and
for always. Yeah.
I'm still mentioning it in most of my groups, and it's kind of funny seeing like the different groups that I participate in who are not in this, like the few in it who are like, oh, that's interesting, and are like interested in the topics. Seeing a few of those pop out. What's kind of interesting too is I have a lot of like global people in it from the UK and from Australia, and it's fun that they're actually almost just as interested in some of the very American specific focused like social construct stuff that we talk about. Even though that's like not their construct, I think it's just for the fun of the comparison. Like, oh, that's not how we do it. It's like this, and then being able to like think about it themselves. They definitely are interested. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, once you get to like, it's one of the weird things when I first started doing like podcasting, is like I didn't understand like the whole global reach thing for a
Yeah.
while, but like for a good while, like a lot of our listeners, not for Balance Exchange, but for like Black and the Black House Infinity, like a huge portion of our listeners were from like Brazil and like I think it was Japan or Korea or some shit like that, and it was like what? Like it was like really weird. And now it's kind of even out. It's mostly because of like reaction videos, which we're not going to do, on this podcast. But it was just very interesting to see like people from like other countries interested in like what we're going to say. But in this podcast, I think it's really good because people get to see like a different take on American policies and social constructs and shit like that. Where like I think like a lot of places aren't really talking about, especially from like two different perspectives. You know.
Yeah, and I would love if we were doing this like as our sole job, and we're like doing the level of deep like research that like John Oliver does. Because sometimes those things I watch and I'm like, man, you went deep on this topic that no one's talking about, and it's super cool. But right now we're both also working professionals and can't do this full time. So
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, I'm sure like when you're researching topics, it takes a good chunk of time, like out of your day.
yeah,
When I'm doing the other podcast, like it's like I could just bullshit. I mean, it's not just like bullshit. I research stuff too, but
yeah.
not anywhere near the level of this.
It's definitely yeah. There's 4 tabs up over here of stuff that I have looked at in order to kind of get prepared. And honestly, like we weren't even sure we were doing this, and I was like, so I started kind of looking, but yeah, it's been fun though. I think that we're kind of talking like this last one, but it's next class, so we're starting to wind this down. But it's definitely been good. Um, I think as far as this topic goes, do you think that there was anything that I know because you know pretty much all of the things I want to talk about, especially on this topic, because we have talked about it at least the broad stroke when I did my top 10. Um, is there anything I'm kind of forgetting? I feel like I'm pretty good on this.
Yeah, I think we're pretty good, but I want to make an emphasis on the actual listeners and viewers of this podcast, because I know that this topic in particular is very controversial. Because if this did occur, it
Yeah.
would affect like everybody in America. So, what do you think about this entire concept? Like, please leave like your honest concepts, or I'm sorry, your honest comments. Either like wherever you're consuming this, whether it's on SoundCloud. I don't think I can actually. Can I see them on? I can see them on iTunes. So yeah, if you're gonna put it on iTunes, I'll see the comments. If you're gonna put it on YouTube, we'll see the comments. If you're gonna put it on SoundCloud, we'll see the comments. But I want to know like your honest comments about this concept of like actually having to earn your citizenship in America instead of it being granted to you from
Yeah.
birth. So
Especially understanding the dividing line between the earned citizenship and the guaranteed residency. Like you're still going to have access to all of the same, rights and benefits. You still fall underneath the Bill of Rights. You still are getting everything you're getting now, except for you just don't get to have the voice in the say unless you're willing to contribute and learn what it means to like give to others. But again, I think my key concern is that the same thing that's going on with the Georgia vote to change the way voter registration works is that you
yeah,
potentially disenfranchise people who should have the ability to get there. Um, but like I think if the system's there to support the requirement, that's where the difference is, and that's where my concern is that if we don't ensure that the system is built first to then process, and obviously I would think we would do some kind of like a graduated process, like you're here now and everybody is good, and then over the next 5 years we'll slowly but surely implement the system, and then at this point it goes into effect and you would need to complete this time. People could then start working their 2 years ahead of it and be like, I did my 2 years, I'm ready, if they're really willing to. But yeah, there would have to be an implementation plan that doesn't just automatically disenfranchise a bunch of people, especially poor people, because I think both of us agree that that's a big part for me. Is I know that if I didn't have the ability to do what I'm doing, and maybe if I couldn't have joined the military, I don't know if I would have been able to put myself in a position to be willing to like take that risk to maybe not make the wages I needed to make to survive in the situation that I was in, because it was very poor, and I wouldn't want to put poor people in this situation where they don't even have an opportunity to participate. That's my biggest concern.
Yeah, so I'm glad you said that. I wrote it down. Is that I think in a subsequent episode we should do like maybe like a top 5 things of what in what order should we start changing America, like as far as like our own personal concepts goes. Like, what is the first thing, the second thing, the third thing, the fifth? Because we've talked about a whole bunch of like concepts on things to like really improve America, but like, and which order should it go into? Because I think that's really important, because there's things that obviously that we talked about like really out of order. Like when we talk about, like when I talk about UBI, like we have to change a bunch of tax shit. Obviously, right? That's very obvious. When we talk about this, we'd have to change like categories of people. And so that would be like a big deal as well. There's like a bunch of other things that we talked about. So obviously I want to do that like a kind of like a couple episodes away from now, and like really think about like what should we change first? What will make the most impact on American lives? You know what I mean? To like change it.
Yeah, because I mean, then I don't know. This might be in poor taste. It's probably in poor taste. Anyways, I'm gonna do it anyways. So like, if we do this thing where there's residents that don't have the right to vote and don't have everything else right, so they're not participating in the government stuff, but they're still pulling information or pulling resources from us. And then we have those citizens who did their time serving each other, whatever. Do those who are as residents only count as 3/5 of a person when we do census?
Jesus Christ.
Sorry, it's a fucked up thing that we did, and I can't help but like reference it, and it would be terrible if we didn't talk about it. But I was like, oh, this is probably in poor taste.
No.
Obviously, that's not going to be.
No, it's not.
No, still a person. Population is there. Sorry.
Yes, the reason why it's not in poor taste is because you understand the actual significance. So yeah. There's context. You understand the context, and hopefully the listeners do too. But yeah, like where do they? To me, the people that are not citizens don't have the right to vote, so they would not be. Right. They wouldn't even occur. But on a census, they should just be written down as citizens. Oh, I'm sorry, as residents.
Yeah. So total population would still be counted.
Yeah.
I just had to make the not joke.
I get where you're coming from, because I mean it did occur in American history, to where people were not considered people that look like me, right, but darker, apparently, because I'm light-skinned, dude.
Neither did Native Americans, and they lived there too in those areas.
Yes, they did. And that's another thing that's just like we should do a whole episode on just like fucked up history in America that are just like totally covered up.
That would be a decent episode, actually.
Yeah.
See if we can outdo each other. Let's do like a battle, like the most fucked up historical concepts, like battle. Like bring in your lowest one first, right? So that way you could come up with a big gun later.
Yeah, no, that would be a good one.
And the game would be like, you can't say the same thing I said, right?
Yeah.
So if I say it, like, you're like, oh, dang, okay, I can't use that. Was one of mine. I have to cross that one off and I come up with the next one.
Well, and the crazy thing is that honestly, like, I think it'd be a surprising episode, because I think that most people would assume that it's going to be all non-Europeans, but it's not the case. Like, we could talk about all kinds of fucked up shit that happened to like the Irish and the Italians in America. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of fucked up shit that happened to them too, but eventually they passed as Americans because they couldn't tell them apart. So, there's that. But yeah, when it comes to like Native American and African American, it's just like, so much bad stuff.
Asian immigrants too.
Yeah. Even today, god damn. The Asian hate today, I'm sorry, this is the tangent. But the Asian hate that we have in America today, like where I see people like other Americans like beating up Asians in America, I'm just like, why am I still living here? Like, are you fucking serious? Like, you're beating up people from Asia, like, for what the fuck for? I
Yeah.
mean, it comes down to what I'm gonna say is the abundance versus scarcity mindset. It really is.
It because right. So the assumption is that if I am living on that edge and they're here, they're taking. So I might end up in a scarcity state mindset.
Well, and also if you look like at who is doing better in America, it's Asians and immigrants in general. Once you get past a certain number of years, they do better than most Americans. So
Probably because they still believe in the dream and are working for it.
yes, because Americans, for the most part, have gotten fucking lazy, and I'm not sorry that I said that because we are.
A lot of people are. That's for sure. I think I've found people close to me who were there for quite a while that I'm helping turn back around through attempts at motivation. So I'm hopefully I'm doing my part, trying.
Wait. Oh, maybe we gotta talk about that on a different podcast because we're winding down, but there's people you're trying to like turn around from what?
Being lazy and just taking from the system, not doing anything, just being here. Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Oh, we talked a little. Okay, I understand what you're talking about from previous conversations.
Yeah.
I got you.
And if you have been here for all of the podcasts so far, you may have been able to put together some people of who I'm talking about.
Yeah, you enlightened me a little bit on Social Security on the last one. I haven't put in the research yet, but I'm going to.
Yeah.
So we talked about. So yeah.
And I think one of the things that is a little bit of a shortfall, and it's based on what we talked about, which is we're both like I like to do some of the research on it, but I can't go that deep, and we can't know what we're both gonna like think of in mid stride, but we just talk about it, which is genuine. Is that like some of this is hearsay and conjecture and like someone else's thing that you've heard, and that's the most we have to go on, which hopefully would lead to then someone calling us out on it. And that's kind of what I always hope for is like I could look and go, oh, that thing we talked about and we weren't really sure, but this was that thing I heard, and I haven't had a chance to look. Someone's able to just be like, no, it's like this. So, oh, cool.
Well, yeah. I mean, honestly, on the last podcast when you were talking about Social Security, when I was literally legit curious about like people. It's going to run out of money, like how, and then you explain like how from your own experience how it could if this kept happening, and obviously it does happen. I was like, oh, well, yeah, in that aspect, then yeah, it could run out of money because if you didn't put in enough money to the system, then yeah, you could run out of money. So I'm gonna do more research on that and see how prevalent it is. But yeah, it's definitely a possibility that I was not aware of.
Yeah, because like the point you said, like it kind of is. It really matters how common that is.
Yeah.
So that's the difference, and I know that I've known enough people that it's happened to that I'm like, okay, if you can keep doing this, and I've seen articles about it, but again, some article somewhere written by a newspaper that has a certain political agenda doesn't necessarily, count. So,
yeah,
I'm good. I think I kind of hit it. I do think this is important. I don't know if this would be the most important thing. I think it would be a huge cultural change and would have a huge long-term impact by making this change and making the people who make the decisions and participate as members of the government, people who have a vested interest in knowing what it means to serve other people. I think it's big, but I don't know that it would be the first thing we would need to change. So I think that list of like a sequential list of how we would need to implement some systems is a good idea. I like that.
Yeah. All right. I think we're good if you're good.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Talk to y'all later.
Later.